Excellent. We're streaming live.
We're good. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order of the City of Monona Plan Commission, Monday, March 22nd, 2021. Could you please call the roll?
Chair Moore.
Here.
Alder Goforth.
Present.
Mr. Homburg.
Here.
Ms. Fallett.
Here.
Mr. Holmquist.
Here.
Mr. Stein.
Here.
Mr. Peterson and Ms. Fox are excused.
Thank you very much, Doug. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of March 8th, 2021?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, great. We have a motion and a second. Any changes, corrections, additions? Chris?
On the page 2, well, it's page 3 too. Page 2, right up on top by the motion, it says the motion carried unanimously. We should mention unanimously, but Rob abstained because that isn't exactly unanimous. And then the same thing on the top of page 3, where it says the motion carried unanimously, Chris and Josh abstained. And the reason I say that is in the beginning it says we recused ourselves, but just from the discussion. So just to be clear that we didn't vote also.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that correction. Anything else? Okay, with those corrections, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the minutes carry. Thank you. Do we have any appearances this evening for people who are not on the agenda as for a agenda item, which is to say, in a pre-hearing mode, or to speak on anything else that's listed here that's not a public hearing? Okay. All right. Well, then that being the case, we'll close the appearance section and move to unfinished business. Number 5A, pre-hearing conference on the request by Populance LLC for consideration of a zoning permit for new construction at 6501 Bridge Road, case number 2-006-2021.
Okay, hi everybody. Yeah, we were here a couple weeks ago, got some great feedback. We have been just thinking through a lot of things and wanted to get before you guys again, just to give you an update kind of on where we are and look for some feedback and direction. Doug, could you put our slides up quickly? Okay, so I just really want to stay focused kind of on our affordability and parking analyses today. We can switch down, Doug. Affordability parking, and then we have Sri Kalluri here to talk about the integrated mobility and transit solution that we discussed in a general sense at the last meeting. One more, Doug. Okay, so when we start looking at affordability, we touched on this a little bit at the last meeting, but we had a more extensive analysis of that. So we certainly understand and appreciate the pressures that people are experiencing with housing costs, and we've been doing a lot of studies and research on this over the past almost 10 years now. Some of these things are out of our control. Some of them are within our control. So one of the components that we started looking at was an overall, can everybody still hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Just an overall cost to live. And we started breaking that down into, let's just look at a rent number and let's look at transportation. And can we affect one of those to decrease the rent burden a little bit? So, and again, these are average numbers based on the data that we got for Monona and also Dane County. But if we start with 80% of the CMI as our upper limit, and let's start working back from there. So we know that 30% of net income is the golden rule here to spend on housing. Rent with a private car has a significant impact. When we start looking at utilizing Mobile 22 and these integrated solutions, we do see fairly significant reduction in monthly living costs, in addition to additional opportunity and equity. Now, again, we understand that people need cars, and we understand that this isn't a solution for everybody, but we do think that it is the right step to approach this and continue the discussion. So from an affordability perspective, we're trying to knock a couple $100 off the rent, off an average rent. And of course, there's going to be variations in there, but we're trying to decrease that burden. But then it really sort of kicks into a higher gear here when we start adding in rent and transportation, and then adding in opportunities to have a program like Shree's. Skip to the next one there. So, again, the transportation realities, we have to move around. We're not going to get around that. We know we don't live in Manhattan. We can't take the subway or walk everywhere. It's just not that dense. But the cost of private car ownership do negatively impact individuals and municipalities, as I'm sure you guys understand as you go through your budget every year. As we talked about at the last meeting, we are seeing more trends from work at home. We are seeing significant reduction in car ownership. So what are we proposing here? Well, let's try to provide some options, in addition to mass transit, and include this model as in the rent or as a separate subscription model. And Doug, you can skip to the next one here. So again, and I know we talked about this last week, just a quick recap. We want the site to be completely permeable. We, in some future slides here, we're showing that, hey, you know what, we do have enough right of way here. We could do some additional street parking for access to the ground level. And that would also connect Broadway and the West Broadway frontage road and Engle. There are opportunities to make package deliveries, pick up and drop off for the car share or the community cars. We think there's plenty of space here, but again, we want to be very we want to get this right, and we want to make sure that what we're proposing is being communicated in the right way. We would also propose something to do with that bus shelter, maybe on both sides of the street. We do think an enclosed bus shelter might also increase some of the activity there as well. I guess it's my fault. I always thought there was an enclosed bus shelter there, but if the city would be amenable to that, we would certainly like to have that as a component of our project. And again, we're really trying hard to show multiple access points and a complete site permeability through there, which has the benefit then of accessing the ground floor commercial and live workspaces. Okay, next one, Doug, please. So here's where we are right now. We've got, the three primary streets there, the Engle, West Broadway frontage, and then Bridge Road. There's some pretty substantial amount of street for there. And I know at our last meeting, there was some, discussion about, the amount of traffic that's actually going there, what is actually needed to the east. Dead ends in that cul-de-sac, and then the wetlands. So we know that's not going to be extended at any time. So let's take a look at this. Go to the next one, Doug. And let's first do our analysis here. So we came up with a couple different scenarios, and we need some feedback on the ground level use. So right now, if we have, let's see, I've got 44% dedicated as commercial space, dedicated commercial space on the ground floor, and then the rest would be the live workspace. So I came up with 107 stalls in that scenario. If all of the ground level space were dedicated commercial, which we don't think is a viable option, but just as a comparison here, then we would have an increase of about 16 stalls. We'd be providing 58 stalls on site, and then we would have some additional street parking per some of those schematic ideas that we had along Bridge Street and Angle Street. So that would give us a shortage in the scenario 1 of about 21 stalls, and those would be compensated for with Shree's program with Mobile 22. If we take advantage of all the space that we think further east on the cul-de-sac, then there's an opportunity to pick up more surface parking or more street stalls there as well. Hit the next one there, Doug. So this is just kind of an overview of how we were thinking about just some general phasing. Some diagonal parking along Bridge Road, some loading, unloading. We're still maintaining the 3 outs from Bridge Road onto Broadway to the north, left, forward, and the right-hand turn. We would have one dedicated lane in from Broadway into Bridge Road, and then still maintain both lanes to the cul-de-sac, and then over to the WPS property. I'm going to skip to the next one. So we just did a quick analysis of the right-of-ways, what we would be thinking for terraces, drive lanes, etc. Along the 6501 Bridge Road, we would request that we would rededicate back a portion of the property for a terrace and part of a sidewalk. Obviously that's something that is in way more detail than we want to get into tonight, but I just wanted to let you guys know that we were thinking through that. One more, Doug. And then I'm going to turn this over to Shree right now to talk a little bit more about the Mobile 22 program and all of the benefits that I did not very eloquently state in our last meeting. So Shree, you can take over now, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Chris. For those of you who don't know me, a little bit of my background: I'm an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. For the last 20 years, I lived on the west side and created a technology company called Forte, where we revolutionized clinical research by bringing software for health systems. UW has been a long-standing customer of ours. Every health system in the US uses our software to manage clinical research. But there, the whole idea was how to help institutions to democratize access to clinical research. That's what I did over the last 20 years and sold the company in 19. A couple of years back, 2017 is where I got really into understanding what is going on in transportation. The thing that got me there is the emissions. If you're following emissions, transportation has become the biggest contributor of emissions and CO2 emissions and greenhouse gases as of 2017. It is mind-boggling. But what we saw is a few trends. How are communities handling that, right? So the one trend, what you saw is significant influx of electric vehicles. Today, there are a lot more electric vehicles, lot more models that are available, which are more affordable at various price points and what have you. The second thing what we have been saying is the adoption of shared mobility. Uber and Lyft, when they created this revolution in 2010 and started taking off, has grown into a significant business where a lot of people started relying on it as a mode of transportation rather than buying their own car. So that is another trend. What we saw is car share programs has significantly started rising to a point where there is an expected increase of another 50% between 2020 and 2025. Car share programs, bike share programs, and ride share programs, both community level providers, whether it is green cabs or yellow cabs or Madison Taxi or Ubers and Lyfts, car share programs, whether it's Zipcar or Car2Go or community-based private car share programs, And bicycle share programs, so there's not only B-cycle, but located in a station and a round trip. All this we're seeing significant increase. When we searched far and wide and we found the motivations of communities, what communities have realized is there is a balance they need to strike between the environmental goals they have, how affordable housing they want to do, and how to make it equitable. Transportation is the greatest equalizer. How do you actually do it? The best way is to bring all the modes of transportation together, whether it is the public transit system, where you got a metro, or in Monana's example, you got the Monana Express and Monana Lift. And then you got cars that can be there within the apartment building or very close by in the neighborhood, so that when you need a car, you can always rent it. As Chris was talking about, he did not give the specific number. It costs about $8,000 to $10,000 for an individual to own a car for a year. However, they use it barely for about 1,000 miles if they do very actively. Of course, last year was an abominable utilization. Nobody used their vehicles last year. So because of all these factors, what we are saying is the combination of local community-based multi-provider ecosystem, whether it is bikes, whether it is public transit, whether the cars, and even public transit, as we talk about, is evolving from a fixed route system, similar to what you have or similar to what Madison Metro is doing, to demand response system, where vehicles will come into where they need to be and pick up the people and cut down the commute time to half. So with all that knowledge, last year, 2019, when I launched a transportation business, I kind of led 3 different companies. One is Mobile 22, which is fundamentally the technology platform to interconnect all the transportation provided in the community and make all these options seamlessly available to the consumers and businesses in the community. The second one is Zerology, which is all about zero emission vehicles. So Zerology is the one who brought 50 different electric vehicles. Most of them are Teslas, but we got Chevy Bolts, and now we're looking at 14-seater buses and what have you. And Green Cab has been doing that. And this month we'll do through Green Cab, we will be doing close to 18,000 rides just this month, despite the COVID situation. And we expect it to go to 30,000 rides a month by the end of the year. So think about the number of rides they're able to give and amount of emissions they're able to save by utilizing electric vehicles in a shared mobility. Then through Zerology, last February, we launched a car share program in 3 different apartment buildings. And unfortunately, COVID hit. Soon after the pilot, we decided not to move forward with the actual launch, but that's what we want to bring back. And right now I'm talking to 8 different apartment properties. Some of them are communities and all the affordable housing program in Dane County, Madison Development Corporation, their buildings. And there is 3 different developments, brand new developments that are coming up, whether it's Jennifer Street or the other one, I'm drawing a blank, it will come back to me some point. And then there is a Bayview, which is closed in the triangle. They want to partner with car share program and bike and ride share. So our idea is to combine. No one single solution will cut it. But if you combine a car share program for those who want to drive, by the way, not everybody want to drive anymore. So there are people who want to be able to commute. This is where we created a commuter program for all the school children. And we do regular rides for Madison Country Day, Edgewood Campus School, and a lot of public schools where the kids are picked up right on time and dropped off. Within half the time what it would have taken them to take a regular school bus. Right? So there is an element of convenience and cost parity and what we had done. So those are the models. What we are thinking is by combining a rideshare program, which is offered in partnership with Green Cab, introducing a car share program in partnership with Zerology, which will bring in all the vehicles and lease and make sure there are adequate number of vehicles in a property. We have math on that, how many vehicles you need per each resident who do not own a car, or basically there is a math we can compute. And roughly you can take 1 in 5, 1 in 6 residents kind of a utilization. We are talking about 6 to 8 hours of utilization per vehicle per month. So they develop business models, they're successful affordable housing programs which have done this. And micromobility is all that. And then Mobile 22 is the technology infrastructure which interconnects all the places. Think about it more like a power grid for a community to bring together and everybody in a seamless ecosystem so that you can easily consume right from ordering to paying for the service integrate with the public transit and the property managers and others through proper revenue models, revenue sharing models, integrating with insurance companies. And I mean, I can talk for until the cows come home, but you get a sense of why I truly believe in this. And this is what we are seeing. This is the future. Car ownership has peaked. GM and everybody is now catering more to lease companies. Every day, more car companies are contacting us, say, hey, would you like us to be partners? Because they can see the writing on the wall that people are stopping to buy vehicles. Not everybody will be replacing their vehicles with electric vehicles. The future is fleet companies who own electric vehicles of whatever kind, motorbikes, scooters, bicycles, cars, pickup trucks, buses. Those are the ones who will work and partner with the local communities and do promote local business and local business operators. So that is the ecosystem what we are envisioning. And we believe that that is going to be the future. I'll pause there and answer any specific questions you may have as it pertains to this particular project or anything about the vision or the challenges.
Thank you, Shri.
Nancy?
Great. Thank you. Definitely helpful, Shri, to have you here. Not that your presentation was bad the last time. just saying.
But I have some passion about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you both. Is there anything else you want to say before we open it up to the commission?
I'm good. Chris, is there anything you want to add?
No, just specifically looking for some feedback on the program, any questions, and then the potential street parking solutions that we threw out.
Right. So I have a question as it relates to the parking numbers and as it relates to Shree's, just to kick us off before I turn it over to the committee, and that is, are you anticipating that the car share cars would be parked in the number of spots that you have identified, or is it the number of spots you have plus those car share, plus the card share spots?
No, that would be inclusive.
It was inclusive of that. So how many cars out of all the spots that you have identified for parking, how many in this schematic that you've currently got in front of us, which would you anticipate being car share cars?
5 to 8.
5 to 8 total for the whole.
Mm-hmm.
And Nancy, if I may jump in and add to what Chris is saying. So though the number of spaces we can calculate based on, once he knows the composition of the tenants, we can easily compute how many parking spaces would be needed. So his assumption is fairly accurate. But the way I want to think about this is like when you go to the grocery store and pick up a milk carton, another milk carton comes forward. So the way the Zerology program works is, yes, you'll have a minimum number of parking spaces at a particular location. However, the number of cars based on, remember, all these are advanced reservations, right? People are booking, planning. Once you plan, all of a sudden, if you find there is a need for 10 vehicles, after the first 5 or 6 or 7 are gone, 6 more will come in and 5 more will come in and park in those spaces.
Okay.
Right? Because we have we have got 2 locations. Belt Street is one and Cottage Grove Road is another. On 700 Cottage Grove, we have huge property there. That is where we'll be housing more cars. As demand comes in, we can bring the cars to where the demand is.
Okay. Great.
Additional cars.
Thank you. Brian, would you like to kick us off?
I was just going to say that we probably want to close the public hearing section and then open up the next.
Good point. Thank you. That's a stellar idea. Although I'm going to suggest we actually only have a pre-hearing conference in this particular agenda. So So if we were to close that, we wouldn't have anything to go to.
Makes sense. Sorry. I left my agenda on the other side of the room.
Okay, great. So would you like to start us off?
Yeah, so thank you for the presentation. A few pieces that came up for me regarding the discussion. When I just look at the staff report, well, actually, I'll pause for a second and give Doug a chance to chime in if there's overview that he wants to give, and then I'd be happy to chime in.
Okay, thank you, Doug.
Yeah, I can. So the staff report itself was very similar to the original staff report. Much of the overall concept, or very little of the overall concept, had really changed. It was really for these additional discussion points. So I think that was the thinking here. There were a few points called out. I think the intent of both the applicants as well as kind of the perspective from staff here was to have more of a focused discussion here on the parking, the mobility, how that impacts and has a knock-on effect with affordability. But I think also thinking about the ground floor uses and public spaces. I think that discussion can give the applicant more feedback as to how to sort of develop the concept, but also depending upon initial feedback from things like the right-of-way parking, for example, can begin taking that back internally to staff for discussion, with potentially with Public Works, and that committee as well, and in terms of, having those discussions. So I think just, welcome thoughts and feedback, and can go from there. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Brian?
Yeah, thanks. So similar to our comments before regarding ground use, I think the commercial space makes sense. The work live, depending on how that's divided, if it's rental versus true commercial or leased out. Like I see the ground space being commercial space. When it comes to the parking, let's see. Parking stalls. So actually, the biggest piece that means, let me find the paperwork because I was thrown off by the numbers, and it has to do with the affordability analysis. And so when I get into the affordability analysis that was provided to us, I'm curious about how the nearly $800 cost per month was figured for a car, and how the cost for utilities was $110 when it's with a car, but yet when we compare it to average with the car share program, drops down to 65, with the car share program being 90. First, curious about the nearly $800 cost for a car. And I get it. Like, I know someone's going to say, hey, it's $10,000 to own a car a year. But I'm telling you, I got 3 cars in my driveway and I didn't pay $30,000 last year. So I really need to know where that cost analysis comes from.
Sure. Chris, I can take the first response, and probably if you may have more things to add. So the basic components that are considered in that, Brian, is one is the purchase price. If you're paying monthly estimated payment and lease payment or ownership payment, what have you. The second thing is the insurance. Insurance can be anywhere, depending upon where you are. It could be $150 to $200. Then the maintenance of the vehicle itself. Then the gas consumption, what you have, then the parking space, what you pay for, right? Those are the components that have been taken in. I have a PDF I can forward you, which there is this gentleman and is a phenomenal scholar called Tony Seba, who is a professor at Stanford. Over the last decade, he done a lot of research on analytical data. He pulled data from the various sources. He analyzed and published. He's a well-known guru on shared mobility and the concept of transportation as a service. I'll be happy to share the link or the PDF with you folks. There is a breakdown that is given, and there is a modeling behind that. So there is proof behind that model. I'll share that. So those are the components, how each one of those add up, right? And electric vehicles, when you compare with electric vehicles, what the biggest thing about electric vehicles is the operating and maintenance costs are a fraction of what you have for internal combustion engine vehicle. By the way, those costs were the 800 per month was for ICE vehicle, internal combustion engine. So it dramatically shifts once you start looking at EVs. And that's why EVs started making sense for fleet companies long before. And now, actually, even for individuals, it is making sense because the costs have dropped. But it made sense even at $50,000 a pop. It made sense because they last for 500,000 miles. So Tony Sebo did a lot of analysis, and he talked about alternate models of if you don't buy a car every 5 years or 10 years and invest that money, you can make $1.5 million in the stock market for the same investment, kind of a thing. But without belaboring the point, I will send you the data so that you can take a look at that.
Yeah, and just to quickly add to that, we did our excuse me, we did a research on a number of sources, and we were trying to find the closest average or mean to this. And one thing that Shri didn't mention was just gasoline and using gas for the commute as part of that expense. If people are commuting to address your utilities. So we have found that just the way we construct things, we're a little bit tighter, we're a little more energy efficient than what we found in the average utilities for multifamily in Monona, and that's primarily because a lot of those are older housing stock, and we understand that. But then after looking at that, we said, okay, well, we also looked at student loans and insurance costs, health insurance costs. Like, hey, you know what? We'll just take that out. We'll take out utilities. Let's just focus on transportation and rent, and let's see how we can move the dial on those two items. So the difference comes in by taking away that projected, let's say $700-800 a month, and then adding in the subscription or the mobility program as either a amenity to the building, or if it's a separate subscription service. So that's where we would realize those savings. And I understand that the cost actually shocked me as well. I was we've spent about a year sort of trying to research what the true costs of automobile ownership is, and I'm distorted on the low end because I never maintain my car. So that was, if I was doing the right thing, I would probably be right in that range too.
That last part was probably the best answer, because me too, 3 vehicles, but I'm telling you, there's no way my maintenance fee is that high. Then again, I don't have 3 new cars within the last 5 years that are following every routine maintenance kind of out there. But with that said, $800, when you're talking a rent of $1,200, which is 30% of their income. And to suggest that their car maintenance fee and ownership of a car is that high, I think is just outrageous, and I don't think it's in the calculation. And the reason this comes up because it figures into the overall parking, and I'm not sure that we have people that are searching for sustainable living and a place to live that has a price point that you're hitting, and to make this be the selling point. And I agree with the concept. I know that sounds contradictory. I'm just saying that I am not sure that this analysis is the accurate analysis to sell me on rideshare program.
Fair enough, right?
And I just want to learn more. And Shri, I am so glad you're here. And I'm happy to look at additional numbers. I lived in a community where mobile transportation and public transportation was amazing. I lived in Portland, Oregon. And I'm telling you, when I moved here, I sat at the bus station forever, and I said, I'm never doing that again. Mm-hmm. And I got myself a car. To be able to compete, I need to be able to see that level of competition to be able to say that it's going to be worth $800 a month.
reliable transportation is what you're talking about. What that means is not only the public transport or demand response system need to play, but also you need to have a car need to be there when you really want to reserve a car. So that is why we came up with this model of continuous flow model, where you are not limited to the cars that are there in the parking space. If there's a reserved, more vehicles will become available. So Brian, you're spot on, right? Unit level economics are debatable. We can talk about, you can always find cases, edge cases where somebody can say, this is the middle of the road, and others can say, nope, this is the middle of the road. But the bigger trend, what I'm looking at is shared mobility has become the new normal, right? In communities, you're seeing people living without a car. I have done that for 4 months. And it was fantastic, right? I can just sit and listen to music or respond to emails or do something in the back of the car rather than having to drive in the commuting hours. So that is what we are seeing. The numbers, if you can see the Uber and Lyft growth, that's all an evidence of a lot of people are not driving vehicles. If you look at it, the number of people, teenagers and others who are getting licenses have dropped. And Garver Point, a friend of mine, Mike, runs that, and he says 25% of his residents do not own a car. Right? So you're seeing whenever there is a concentration and people who are congregating around these urban areas, and also there is trend that more influx is happening into the urban areas and the density is increasing. So that means a lot of things what you need are within the reach without having to always have to drive a car. So cars will become, from that perspective, more of a suburban thing rather than urban kind of a thing is the expectation. And those are the trends. That is where things are going. Today, we may not have a lot of ample proof to say this is absolutely already done, but all the indications are showing that is where we are seeing, and utilization of parking spaces has significantly fallen. As a matter of tomorrow, I'm talking to one of the builders to get their data on how well their parking spaces are utilized. They're underutilized. He's saying absolutely they're underutilized. By the way, he's one of the guys who's going to put our car share program for that reason.
Thank you. This was great. I think some of the additional modeling around some parking options, I think was some great initial ideas. You know, the paired information with really how can this multiple kind of ride share, multi kind of modal aspect partner with this larger concept of like, how do we use parking in a different way? And the connection of like, you're really now stretching to parking on the other side of that Broadway, that Broadway spot. So you're looking at, okay, what's going on over at KinderCare and the what is it, the tire store, and are we looking to something bigger in the future? So those pieces, regarding parking, I'm happy to see kind of the progression in this path, and I'm happy to hear some of the additional kind of information and data, and this has been very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Just as a point of information, in case committee members or commission members didn't see it, Sri put the link to the article that he referenced early on in the conversation with Brian already in the chat. That Stanford research. So just know that it's there and will be part of our meeting in case you didn't see the chat pop up. Chris?
Not me, Chris. Okay.
Yeah, the Chris. Yeah,
well, it took me a while. This is technology we're talking about. Okay. Well, I like the way we're going. I think there's still not enough parking. I'm worried. I understand everything that's being said, and most of these things are being said at the current. And I know we struggled. I know we're talking about in the future, this will be the way, but we're talking about building the building now and not in the future. So I think we have to be careful about what we have for now. So some of your big points you asked for, Chris, I agree with Brian that the lower level needs to be commercial, including the one that you say residential on. I think one of those pods you have residential. But for me, I also think if you can do some way of guaranteeing that this work live, I think that's a great concept, because that's one where they don't need as much transportation. But I think you can come up with some way to guarantee that it's work live and not somebody that lives there and that's their den downstairs. if you follow the distinction. If it's truly they have that is their office, they're working from home or a home business or something versus, well, I've got my den downstairs and that works. Do you understand the nuance I'm getting at?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the intent, obviously, for the, per the building code, that's how we would, that's what would regulate that. And I think there's there would be an easy solution in there as a deed restriction or part of the condo docs or some other instrument to ensure that would not be used as someone's ping pong room for rec room. And I think there's some ways that we would love to work with staff to make that happen. Absolutely.
That was a great answer, because when you're talking about deed restrictions or documents, and there's some enforceability that this remains, because this is a prime commercial corner in Monona. I mean, next to maybe Monona Drive and Broadway, this might be one of the best corners for commercial. And I understand that it won't all be little shops and dentists and accountants, but certainly the frontage you have along Broadway and Bridge lends itself to that. And some of these other units lend themselves to that work-live arrangement. And a work-live could be somebody that has a little, sewing shop or something down on the first floor. I don't know what it is, but that helps play into your idea of trying to have less cars. We're going to swallow hard on the numbers, I think, right now that you have. I like your creativity. Obviously, this would have to go through Public Works. They'd have to sign on to it. I want to ask a question. You gave us some details about the typical cross sections. You really didn't mean, on your last page, you show West Broadway Road existing and with angle. You really don't mean you're going to apply to park on West Broadway, do you? I mean, there's no way. That's a county highway, a county trunk highway. We have a hard time getting curb cuts on that road.
No, I think what I meant was the West Broadway frontage. So
that would be angle then.
Yeah. So when I was looking at Google Earth, and Access Dane, it was either called angle or West Broadway frontage. So I tried to
West Broadway is the county trunk highway. I just about had a coronary when I saw you were suggesting angle.
Oh, no. No, sorry about that.
Okay, well, that's what was in the details, because you also have angle down below further too, and Bridge Road. So you have all three of them on your details. And at that point, I thought you were thinking of doing it on 3 different roads.
No. So the way that I saw it on Access Dane was that it was called West Broadway frontage road, east of Bridge Road, and then angle was west of Bridge Road. So I figured we would just talk about it tonight, and I'll get it clarified.
That clears it up. While I'm on that page, you need about 19 feet for angle parking. It depends on how wide your stall is and what angle you have it at. And we have it all in our zoning thing, but 15 feet won't cut it for any angle parking, no matter what. Well, if you maybe had a 70 or 80 degree angle, but then you're almost parallel parking. It's just a car running across angles can't fit in 15 feet. So just when you're looking at what you can fit in, I think some of the things you're looking at, you won't fit in the existing street. You'd have to do modifications. I think it's going back though. I think it's critical. Some of that parking would be there. I'm going to jump on one of the things Brian said. For looking to the future, to say, well, we'll put angle parking in front of KinderCare and take all that, that's maybe nice for now, but it really ties the hands for that property owner when we've taken and used all the road frontage for one corner and the other corner has no ability to use additional road frontage because we've used it all up for your project. So that one gets me a little bit. And one thing looking at it when I was driving by there, do you have any potential to buy some expanded right-of-way or anything on the southwest side of Angle Street? Because that looks like high land for most of it. So in other words, on Angle, it would be adjacent to your property. Would we be able to get angle parking on both sides of the road?
We have talked about that internally, and again, we really want to do this the right way, and that's why I'm not trying to annoy you guys by coming back 2 weeks later, but I think some of this feedback is critical so we can really start exploring that.
I for one, I'm really glad you came back 2 weeks later and want more input, because this is a complicated project, and I think it's great, and I don't think it's a waste of anybody's time to talk about it a little more. So when we look at the numbers, and it goes back, I guess I'm going to go back again to this ride share where you feel people won't own a car. So number one, how do you assure that? So once we put in angle parking on Angle Street and they say, no, we're not going to have a car, we won't need a spot in the basement, and they just buy a car and start parking out there on Angle Street and using up that parking, which isn't in the calculation. And the second part to that is on this rideshare parking, I understand the concept. It's going to take time to initiate it, and it could work, but at what percentage? I'm just playing with, in my mind, how do we figure that out? And I know you're doing the same thing, because at the end of the day, everybody on this call wants, if this happens, we all want it to be successful. We don't want to have parking be an issue. And I, for one, am very sensitive to it after the last 3 years kitty corner from you. I've always been sensitive to it. Who am I kidding? I've always been sensitive to parking, but that one really highlighted it for me. So I guess I'm asking questions, not giving you a chance to answer, but what happens if somebody says, no, I won't have a car, because you're taking your calculation, right? This won't work if everybody in that building has a car and we have commercial business there. There's not enough parking for that. So when you say, yep, I'm going to do it, I'm not going to have a car, what happens when that person buys a car? Do we, I'm looking for ideas. Do we restrict parking on Angle to a certain time period? No overnight parking? I mean, I don't know how you do it to make it work for the businesses and the residents, but you still want visitor parking there for all the residences. This is a lot of residences. They're going to have Thanksgivings and parties and different things where they want people to come over and be able to frequent in there. So in my mind, I was trying to, I guess, make those two things work together. You talked about you weren't sure if you're going to make it a add-on or include it in the rent. For our parking shortage, it seems to me if you included it in the rent, that would really encourage people not to go out and buy that car and say, nah, I think I'd rather just get a car and still do it. Now, not to tell you how to do it, but when we're looking at solving a parking issue, if you haven't included in the rent, pretty soon when they've got a free car down there, and I don't know how you control how many hours each person uses it, and so they don't monopolize a car and one person's using a car, driving it to work and leaving it sit downtown all the time. I'm sure there's ways to look at that, but just thinking about it after hearing tonight, it would seem if it was included in the rent, that would really de-incentivize him from actually owning a car too.
So, Chris, if I can answer that question, Chris, just a quick aside. So whenever you do that, whenever you include, you limit the number of hours they get as included part of the rent, and then they need to pay after so many hours. That way you'll stop from people monopolizing, and we'll make sure that they actually use the technology to reserve the vehicle so that there is visibility to who's using when and how much.
Yeah, that sounds good. There'd have to be a way to do that, otherwise people would take advantage of it. What do you do when someone wants to go visit relatives over the weekend?
That is where I said the access cars can be brought in, so that if they want to rent it for the hot weekend and go somewhere else, we'll give them an additional car and still keep that. It's all demand response system. Based on the amount of demand, you bring in more vehicles.
And I assume if they're part of this program, when you say you'll bring one in to rent it, they have some better rate than just going to Hertz or something. They'll have some better value because they're part of this program, where that's one of the perks to being part of this program.
Exactly.
Okay, understood. I doubled up here. One thing, and I mentioned that it would need to obviously go to Public Works and they'd have to buy in. We did it kitty corner from here on the roads, but there's going to be some opinions on how close it can be to Broadway. That's a stoplight intersection. You can't have a angled parking there where somebody's backing out within 20, 30 feet of the stoplight and people are trying to clear. So once around a stoplight, there'll be a little more to think about there. I mentioned the Northwest unit, you show residential. I'd say it needs to be either the live work share or the commercial. And again, I want to hear from everyone else, and I don't mean to speak against what Brian said, but I think a combination. I think you show a little over half of it as true commercial, and then a little under half you'd like to show as live work. As long as we have that way that we know it's physically doing it, I can see this as something people would enjoy, and it would probably save some car trips. I mentioned Broadway. We talked about that angle. 19. I know this isn't tonight, but I'm going to mention it. How much of that underground parking is exposed, especially down by Bridge Road and Angle? It looks like a lot of that's coming out of the ground, and you're not diving down very far to get into that.
Yeah, it's about halfway down Bridge Road is where we start seeing some exposure from that wall.
That's what I thought. When I'm looking at, we don't have an elevation there, but it's just a thought when you start looking at that, if this progresses, that we're going to need to see some kind of treatment on there, likely masonry or something, so it's just not an ugly concrete wall sitting there.
That's correct, and that's also kind of an opportune place to we would have extra access or extra opportunities for access, up that grade, and that would also be primary loading and waiting for some of the mobile cars could be in that area too. We definitely want that to be a nice area. People are going to be driving past that all the time.
Okay, and then I'm going to agree with Brian on the cost of ownership. I have a nice car. I probably spend that $800 or more, but I think there's a lot of people that don't, especially that are looking for a good value in housing. They probably spend less, and that just goes into your prospectus, how you're figuring this out. But if it's $590 is a lot less than that. And I know a lot of people Uber or rideshare or Lyft right now. And so what we're really looking at is, do they have that vehicle available for when they want to drive themselves? And I think it's important. I'm going to be very careful going forward, looking about what we have for parking. And the reason I mentioned the other side of Angle Street is, if we get to a point where we're comfortable with certainly everything you've proposed now for existing, and maybe a little more, Nancy talked about, it was a real good way to put it, is plan B. If this doesn't work and we're just flat out short of parking, that other side of Angle is, to me, that ideal spot for your additional parking. Then we don't encumber the lot across Bridge Road from you, because otherwise we do that, then DiMaggio and the daycare are there forever, and that might change. Maybe this is so successful that you want to buy those two properties and replicate it on the other side of the road.
We've discussed that internally as well.
I think it sounds like I should be in on some of these meetings.
So, but just to quickly answer your question, when we're doing our analysis, and factoring in the parking that would be part of, quote, phase one, that would be part of this project, the Angle parking, and then the parking on Angle, that gives us the 21 stall deficit per Monona zoning. And so we're confident that we can pick up that deficit with Shree's program. Okay. If it doesn't, then, well, plan 2B would be, could we move further down Angle Street, or, which is a great idea, could we go right across Angle Street to the south? Let's find a way to contain this worst case scenario. Let's find a way to contain this and have a plan for it.
Right. And let me just ask, when you say 21 stall deficit, that's per our code, but if you have this program implemented and you, for example, have 6 vehicles and it does average 5, that'd be 30 stalls you've made up for, and you're putting 6 in there, so that'd be 24. So you'd be kind of hitting the minimum with that, correct? Am I doing that math right?
You are doing it right. I was being very conservative for the sake of our discussion today, because I didn't want to oversell anything. And this also this also is dependent on how we sort of decide what that commercial and live workspace is. So if we're in agreement that we can roughly hit 50-50 dedicated commercial space and 50% live workspace, then that does bring our ratios down just a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure you know this. I'm one voice. For me, to have half or a little better true commercial and other half live work, as long as we have those assurances that it's live work and not the den, I think it's unique. I think it's something new, and I think it's something I don't see in the market here right now. And I'm sure you've researched it. You're very thorough, and I'm sure there's a demand for something like that. And it goes back to almost old school. You live above your shop or where you do things, and that's, a lot of people like that feel. So that's one voice. Thank you.
No, but I appreciate it very much.
Chris, thank you. Rob?
Okay. I feel like I need a notebook and a sharp pencil to take notes for this meeting. I feel like it's a bit of an education. I appreciate you coming, Shri, and explaining this. And certainly it's a lot of information, too much to cover in a night, but I do appreciate it. In my opinion, I like the idea of having dedicated commercial space and live workspace. I think that's a good model. And if it's, it hasn't been done, and I think it allows us to ease into it a little bit more instead of jumping in both feet on a new concept development in Monona. I was going to ask Shri, with the Mobile 22, and you talk about it being like a power grid, and I think I understood based on your responses to a couple other questions about it's on-demand cars. So if you have 6 cars in the program at the building right there, and there's not one there, the technology brings another car there or makes one available. I think I understand that. So you said it works as a power grid with other transit options.
Mhm.
In this development, how specifically will it interface
Sure.
with other transit options?
So today, Mobile 22 platform is the one which entire green cab fleet runs on. So the rideshare program. So far we are talking about car share. The green cab rideshare program, what I was talking about, which is taking care of commuters, scheduled, recurring rides, on-demand rides, and all that. And this platform is actually used right now. There are 4 other customers who are onboarding, a couple from Michigan, one from Minneapolis. So this is a countrywide program. So one is the rideshare. That's the one which is really picking up right now. And car share is the one what we'll be launching this year. Right? We did the pilot last year. We learned everything, what works, what doesn't work. Zerology is the partner who is actually bringing the vehicles. So there are 2 components. Mobile 22 is the technology platform. It allows you to make a reservation, to make sure the vehicle is there, and then you're locking and unlocking the vehicle with your phone, checking in and checking out. And if you need insurance, you can buy insurance from the phone. All those are done by the technology platform. The service provider who is bringing in the vehicle, leasing the vehicle, cleaning it after every rental, doing a daily wash of the vehicle, that is a program manager that will be Zerology. If you want a ride share, where either as a commuter or on demand, you want to go to the airport, you can, from the same app, you can just ask for a ride. It will be green cab. For example, if you want to enable something like the Monona Alert, or if you need wheelchair access, we would partner with somebody like Union Cab or Madison Taxi, who will be on the same platform. The single app, the single portal will allow you to access all these providers for different purposes. Am I making sense?
Yes, thank you. In regards to the site plan and the parking panes, I'm encouraged to see what you put forth with all the angled parking and creative thoughts. When you take that turn onto or go straight onto Broadway, across Broadway in between KinderCare and the development site, it's just it's 40 plus feet of concrete, and I know parking is concrete too, but I feel like if there is a development there, it's got a lot more purpose. And as far as efficiencies of commuter traffic for WPS and whatever happens over there, it's not a thoroughfare. It's like, I'm not so concerned with stacking cars waiting to get out of the site. But as Chris alluded to, function into the site has to remain because of the speeds in which people are coming off of Broadway. Granted, those speeds are going to be reduced, I see, which helps the safety of the site a little bit. But I like the innovative thought of looking at angled parking like we did over at the current. Going on the south side of Ingle Drive there, I think goes to my next point, which was kind of already said. I like the fact that there is plan A, plan B, plan B.1. Let's see here. I had caught the dimensions for the angled parking as well that seemed a little tight unless it's subcompact vehicles only or something like that, which is, you know, depending on how much room we have. But I think you had 11-foot drive lanes. You're probably not going to want to go much smaller than that. And I have just kind of a general comment based upon the whole concept and the information we've had about people's need for cars and looking for alternatives and what the trends are showing us. And this, I mean, it's weird times, but it's comes at a pandemic when gas prices are given away, you know. But it wasn't that long ago, I recall gas prices being $4 a gallon plus. And I'm no energy expert, but gas prices will go up again. And people, I remember at that time, people were scrambling to figure out cost saving options because the affordability of their vehicles became a real concern. And I don't, I'm not a future teller, but I think that'll happen again at some point in our lives. And I don't know when that'll be, but I don't think gas is going to be so affordable forever. That's my opinion.
That is consistent with what we are seeing, and that's why we are seeing a lot of affordable housing programs being interested in this, because the hourly rental rates can be contained. So it becomes a lot more easier for people with limited means to be able to rent a car to run to the grocery store and do their groceries for probably $8, right? So that is how you can make it a lot better than taking a $30 ride or waiting for the city bus and walking with the grocery bags along the streets.
Okay, I think I'll leave it at that right there. Again, I appreciate the information and yeah, parking and function and flow are kind of the hurdles we're trying to get over here. And I like the progress. I like the ideas. I'd be curious to know how Public Works is going to react to it. But so far, I really like what I see. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rob. Christy?
Yes. Yeah, I would just start the green component of this is highly appealing. I really like that. It fits really well with our brand as a city, and you know it's important for the future. I saw on the cover of the State Journal maybe a week or two ago another development called Baker's Place on 800 East Wash that has a car share program going in. Is that you, Shri? Are you working with them?
Baker Street, I'm drawing a blank. I need to look at my emails.
Okay, yeah. It said it's called Baker's Place, and it's a new development that's hitting the Madison Plan Commission right now, 15-story building, 800 East Wash.
Oh, now I remember. I just got an email yesterday. I need to respond to that.
Okay.
Yes,
Well,
I know what you're talking about.
Excellent. Well, you know, and so I was like, oh, that's interesting because we're talking about that here. And so you can see the trend has reached our doorstep. So I just thought that was interesting. I was wondering, Chris, if you could tell us about like some other projects you've done in the Madison area.
Oh, sure. So I moved up here from Kansas City, Missouri, started working for Randy Alexander, and you know was promptly sent back down to Kansas City to work on a lot of the historic renovation projects that he does. You know, we did an old courthouse, an old 20-story office building. Then we started working on the Capitol West and the Broome Street lofts here in Madison. And then was out in Washington, D.C., did another giant historic renovation out there. Then I started working for a local developer on a few projects on East Washington that were, let's say, you know, some of the constellation and the galaxy down there were, you know, some of the two that we really struggled with parking down there as well. You know, particularly with the original grocery store. You know, the original grocer was Metcalf's down there in Festival Foods. And, you know, Metcalf's had done their homework and they said, you know, we need about 70 parking stalls. And everyone thought that they were, you know, their peers and some of the city staff thought that they were just insane. You know, that grocery didn't come to fruition, you know, unfortunately, because they're great guys and it would have been a fantastic store. You know, Festival stepped up, and the first thing they said was, we need 400 stalls. We're not going to do this without, with any less than 400 stalls. So, you know, we went through a great deal of analysis and time with them, got them down to about 140 stalls as part of their project. And now I think, you know, that they were renting from the developer. And I think now the total number that Festival has is about 70. So, you know, they just had so much bike and walk-up traffic. Now, again, we understand that this is a lot more dense, you know, down on East Washington and some of those projects there. But the idea of parking, even from 2013 and 14 to now, and car ownership, I mean, we're just watching it change. And you know, the other thing that just is interesting about those projects is we specifically designed those as flat slabs with a speed ramp up the middle, because, you know, we were anticipating at some point those are going to be repurposed, and we wanted to not do, you know, an angled parking or a slope or ramped parking scenario, because then what do you do with it? You know, it's 20 years from now, it's just, you know, it's so difficult to repurpose that. Well, we did it this way, you know, on both of those projects. And, you know, it's just something that we've really been very keen to trying to solve this problem. You know, number one, we want safer streets. Number, two, we want, you know, it's critical for people to keep moving around, right? I mean, we have to do it. That's the reality. But, you know, we don't need buzzsaws for streets. We don't need people to keep getting hit by cars. You know, we can make attempts to slow down the streets, which is what we're doing with you know, putting in some angled parking and keeping some street parking and making sure we have you know, a very strong street presence. So I'm completely going off topic here, but those were the major ones that we worked on in Madison, Christy.
Yeah, nice. Well, I was wondering, like, if you'd had parking issues with other developments, and so it sounds like they kind of resolved. And yeah, that's just interesting. Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
As far as the live, work, and the commercial spaces go, so I ran our Chamber of Commerce for about 5.5 years. And those small spaces are incredibly popular here. They do tend to go fast, those small commercial spaces. Do you have an idea of the square footage of one of those commercial spaces yet?
So on the first floor, we would range from about 680 to 1,000 square feet for that. So which would be, you know, which we found to be a really good size for an office. And like we talked about last time, there's some sole practitioner attorneys. There's insurance people. There's a lot of sort of professional offices that just are just really excited about doing something like that.
Well, yeah, and we definitely have a need for that kind of that professional office space here. So I feel like both the retail at that size would be incredibly well received, as would the live work component. I liked your wide terraces around the building, and I thought that really makes a nice welcoming presence. Did you have any thoughts of like activity happening on those terraces, or because like I think they were like 10 feet wide?
I've not given that any thought. We just we wanted to program in enough width to make it usable and comfortable, and then the next couple levels through, we would love to continue to have those discussions. All right.
And I know there were talks about the connectivity, like to the development across the street and the park. I noticed that's a controlled intersection. It's got the push buttons for the lights. So really for a county highway intersection, 4-lane, I feel like it's about the best it could be for connectivity. So I feel like this is really a good space to try a project like this. I also, when I think about the transit, you know, because we are challenged here. We don't have transit like Portland. And we're, you know, we're a little behind on that. But boy, when I think of this site, I think of the Park and Ride is probably about a mile away. We've got a Madison Metro spot right across the street. We've got a Monona Transit spot right in front. We've got bike lanes on both sides. We now have a B-cycle coming across the street. It's just, it's almost as good as it gets as far as transit goes. So I feel like for me, the parking constraints, you know, I'm not as maybe uneasy about that as people who've been on this commission longer and lived through the current, I guess. I feel like this could work here pretty well. I'm optimistic about that. So I think that's all I've got. So yeah, I'm really excited that you're, you know, looking at this site in Monona, because it's obviously a up and coming trend, and hopefully we can all figure it out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Corinne.
Hi, good evening. I just want to echo that I am excited about the project, and I think it really does fit really well with the goals and objectives that we lay out for our community. And so, you know, we mentioned in there exploring different multimodal strategies. And so this, you know, that's what you're talking about. And I think that's really great, as well as looking for options for affordable housing. And so I am excited about it. And I won't go over too much. You know, everyone has brought up some really good points. Some of the things that I was going to mention as well. I'll reiterate what Chris said. When I saw that there was residential on the ground floor, I also felt a little uncomfortable about that. Just thinking about what you had talked about. I know you're still conceptualizing, but I know that you are thinking of having that bottom floor space be a place where people are walking or gathering. And so, you know, I wouldn't want to have my apartment down there if there's going to be people gathering outside. So it just seemed like it's something that's a little bit more commercial focused. I also was unsure of what the live work would be, but you've been answering that, I think. So it'd be more of the individual attorney, the insurance, sales, maybe a alteration shop or something like that. So, because I was thinking if it was a more commercial space with maybe more than one customer coming at a time, then that would also influence the parking. And so, you know, if there's 26 of those and they're more of a like multi-customer at a time, that would lead us to need more parking rather than less parking. So, and I don't know what you're going to propose as far as that, but I think thinking about that will be important as well as you consider the parking issues. And then at the meeting a couple of weeks ago, you had, if I'm remembering correctly, I think you were uncertain at that point if you were going to be looking at ownership versus rental or a mixture. And I guess, you know, I'm not familiar. Is it typical to ever have a mixture of rental versus ownership? Because I'm thinking if somebody wants to open up their business and do a live work, but then they have rental properties around them, I don't know if that's less appealing or if that doesn't matter. So I guess I'd be curious if you have any thoughts on that.
If we take the first two floors at the ground level as a, let's just call it a commercial condo, a commercial live work condo that is for ownership, it's not uncommon to have rental properties or for lease residential above that. It would all be managed by the same, you know, by the same group. And you know, in a lot of ways you have you have a lot of eyes on the street. You know, you would have you know, additional. It wouldn't be something where you wouldn't have activity after 5 o'clock, right? You would still have activity there. You'd still have a presence. Now, is there an opportunity to have the upper levels be owner occupied as well? Yeah, absolutely. We're still looking through that model. But frankly, we just don't know right now. So, you know, we wanted to base our analysis firstly to figure out rent burdens and a rental model. And then, you know, again, this is why this feedback at these meetings is just so fantastic, because it gives us additional direction to, and honestly, things we would have never thought of that come from all the members here, then we can go back and keep refining and keep sharpening, our intent here. So, to answer your question, we don't see an issue having an owner-occupied live-work component with rental above. We just don't see any issues with that, but we would also like to look at a couple different models too.
Okay.
And one other quick thing, I did try to get Rossi's to move here and they said no. So they're happy where they are apparently.
I liked the thought you were putting into the bus stop as well, because, and the fact that you mentioned it's Madison across the street, but that would probably be important because when I drive past there in the morning and I see people freezing out there, in the rain, that is not going to be a big selling point. But I think if it's a more comfortable space, that would help. Go ahead.
No, and just making it part of this project where we're comprehensively looking at all of these different transit solutions. Yeah, why not? I mean, we could, we think we could make something consistent and bring a sense of, not only a sense of identity to that mode of transit, but also for that part of Broadway also. So we think there's an opportunity to keep working with you on that if there's any desire.
Okay. And then not related to the questions that you asked, but I just, in thinking about this project and the energy it could bring to this part, in addition to everything that's going on across the street, I just think it would just bring new opportunities to this part of Monona, which is pretty exciting as well, because we do have some amenities that are down the road. We have, the park down the road, we have Waypoint, we've got a lot of different things going on down a mile down the road. So I think, I'm excited by it. So I'm not annoyed that you came back 2 weeks later to talk about it again. So.
Oh, thank you.
I'm glad to hear that, Chris.
Great. Susan Fox, you have joined us. Do you have anything to add?
I don't know whether I have anything to add because I missed the whole first part. I will go back and listen to that though, because I really wanted to hear your presentation and discussion. I do think it's an exciting project. So I don't know if these questions have been answered either. The live work units, I take it, are designed as that. And I'm wondering if down the road, if that doesn't pan out, if they are built in such a way that they could be separate units. In other words, the live unit could end up being rented separately from the work one. I mean, I don't know how much that's a factor. I'm a little still.
Uh-oh.
I assume that's what you already had a lot of conversation about, so I won't dwell on that a lot. But one of the concerns I had was also if the building is sold at some point, and a new owner wants to change that usage, I mean, is there a way to lock that in, or we would just hope that this owner would have, because you're making a commitment to buy community cars and that type of thing, and whether a new owner would have to have that same commitment was just another concern I had. And I don't know if that's something you've ever had to address or.
No, we haven't, but that's a great comment. We'll note that and come up with some solutions to address it. Absolutely.
Okay, and because I don't know if there's a way to tie that in with a deed or whatever. That's all beyond me. But it's just a little bit of a concern. It most, if it were in a more densely populated area, I wouldn't have any discomfort with it. It still seems a little trickier to make it work where it is, because that Madison bus stop is the only one, and we don't even have control over that. That's Madison, but it's been there for as long as I've lived here, which is a long time. So I don't see that changing. And I think, we don't know what's going to happen behind it with WPS either, and with that property that they're going to sell. And there may be even more vibrancy coming in and more reason for people to be riding bikes. And I think we've already got the light for people to cross as far as getting across to the restaurants, Buck and Honey's, and that kind of thing. I think that's doable. So I'll just go back and listen to the previous part and be ready next time you come.
Thank you, Susan. I would echo, I think, what you've heard from just about everybody else, which is this is exciting. And I think we still have parking concerns, obviously, but I really appreciate the direction you're going. I have one question, and that is, has there, that I'm stealing from, actually from Devin Renner, who posted in the chat, which is, have you had discussions yet with, since I noticed it was on the on your slides, potential discussions with the daycare, car, tire place around like nighttime parking or anything like that? Because as
No.
you probably know, we that's one of the solutions we came up with the riverfront, with the bank, initially. So
The daycare does open at 6:30 in the morning, so I don't know how, how likely that would be, but it's
right,
not that big a lot either, but
right,
it'd be worth checking.
right.
Yeah, and again, I hate repeating this over and over again, but we, we're very what's the right word? We're very slow paced in getting feedback, right? So we want to do this right, and it's really important for us to do this right for the municipality, right? And not only for us, because what we think that this could really have a huge contribution to the adjacent area and other developments in the area if it's done right. So that's why we're just being really meticulous in taking these sort of baby steps and continually getting your feedback. So to answer your question, no, it's on our list. Have we contacted them? Not yet, but we will.
Great, thank you. And again, I think you're definitely going in the right direction, obviously, in terms of the parking and as I said the last time, and as Chris pointed out tonight, having a plan B would be really helpful, but otherwise, I just, from an anecdotal standpoint, I can certainly say, and it is purely anecdotal, but even in terms of my own family, which is tiny. So it's, my sister and brother-in-law went down to one car a long time ago. My niece and nephew didn't get their licenses. My niece, and she's now 30, and she finally just got a license. She moved someplace rural where transit isn't an option. But she did it kicking and screaming. She didn't want a license, as opposed to me that at 15 and a half, the day I turned 15 and a half and could start driving, I was in a car to get my driver's license. So, and couldn't, so I think, and I have friends that drive Uber and, help people commute every day. They drive people every day and commute instead of those people having their own car. So, so it's happening, I think, a lot more than we realize, just in terms of, people using alternatives. So I don't want to belabor this, but I actually want to put one other person on the spot here tonight, if we can do that, because we are talking about, I would argue, the next gen. So I'm going to ask Alyssa. I'm going to ask Alyssa if she can unmute herself, and I want to know what Alyssa thinks about this.
Yeah, I actually, I mentioned this to Doug, but I think this concept is really interesting. I personally don't own my own car. I kind of share a car with a friend of mine. So it's technically her car, but we split all of the gas and insurance and maintenance costs. And I use my bike a lot. Pre-pandemic, I was an avid user of public transit, and I don't really do that now. So I think it's really interesting. And I definitely think that certainly among like friends of mine, people are really interested in making use of car sharing and other forms of transportation. So I think it's a really cool proposal.
Okay.
Cool.
Great.
Thank you.
I appreciate you weighing in.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions, comments tonight before we? Yes.
Just one other quick one. So from the last meeting, I know there were some conversations about across the street and then the one to the east, whose name I can never remember, where they were going to have some car share programs or community car programs in place. Did anybody find out if they actually implemented any of those? Was it Traceta, right? Is that the
Yara Place? Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yara Place, yeah.
No, they have not. They do have car charging stations, but no car share program.
Okay.
Well, maybe I should be able to help them. But
Yes.
hey, I wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's an opportunity. Maybe if there was another one right down the road, that might help.
So one comment I wanted to make, actually, it echoes what Chris is saying is this process is going to be very collaborative. It is not like there is a single recipe for success. We got a formula which we can just plug in and everything will work. So there's a lot of fine tuning based on the needs of the community and a specific property. So just like what Chris is talking about, how he is looking at the building, the same with the program, right? Car share, ride share programs, what are the different models to include? So there is a lot of flexibility along the way. The goal is to make it work. The goal is to make it successful. Yeah. Right? So we're in it together. That's
Great.
what I'm saying.
Chris Humberg, yes.
One other point with Tracy, you're asking about Tracy. When we approved that project, we did talk about parking and the issues with it, especially for the restaurant. They had control over the property that they don't now across the road, the piece that George Kinsler used to own, and they committed to the fact that they would have valet parking and they'd take the customers' cars over there and bring them right back for them. And of course, that never happened. I don't know how that would have been feasible, but they had committed to valet parking for the Waypoint. If parking was an issue. And so that's another thing that didn't happen.
Right.
Yeah, and to that point, we've all been through this enough where, and I think I told you guys at the last meeting that some of these other projects I've been involved in, it was, oh yeah, we'll get the community car down there, and then the community car people say, we're just not interested. There's not enough density. So, to your point, and this is where I really, really like this conversation. So to the point about the live work, oh, sure, I can tell you nobody's gonna, have that be a living room, but let's get this documented. Let's get it to a point where it can be enforced, right? Then I'm happy, everybody else should be happy. Same thing with the parking, okay? So, let's get this figured out up front. There's not gonna, even if there is headaches down the road, there's a path to resolve the headaches down the road. So that's how we like to go through things, and that's why we're very meticulous up front, because it's a lot easier to talk and change things on paper than to try to find a solution 3 years from now and everyone's mad. So that's kind of how we like to approach these things.
Great, Chris. Well, I really appreciate it. Sheree, I really appreciate it again. We're excited. We appreciate you coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, you guys.
My pleasure. Nice to
Yep.
meet you all. Take care.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, we will close the pre-hearing conference for Populance and move to 6A, public hearing on the request by Lisa Putzka of Graphic House Inc. and property owner United Properties to repeal the existing 2016 Pier 37 sign plan and replace it with a revised comprehensive sign plan for Pier 37 dated March 13, 2021, case number S-004-2021. Lisa, welcome.
We actually have Mike Johnson here this evening. He'll be presenting instead.
Mike, welcome. Thank you for your patience in waiting.
No problem. No problem. I apologize that you have to look at me instead of Lisa.
Yeah.
I hope I got quite an education throughout that last item, so I wasn't bored. It's good stuff. Anyway, this is pretty straightforward. We also went through this process one other time with you folks the last time that the Pick and Save logo was changed on their building. This time, similar situation. Pick and Save Roundy's has decided to upgrade this particular store from a typical Pick and Save to a Metro Market, which is a upscale version. that they're also doing, this is one of 4 in the Madison area that they're converting. They're also converting some in the Milwaukee market as well. So there is one in Madison now, and there are many of them in Northern Illinois. So it's basically just removing the existing pick and save signs, and in the areas where those signs are, we're not adding any signs. We're just replacing sign for sign. In the area where those signs are, they put up an architectural covering over the old area, and it's actually really kind of part of the branding of Metro Market. It's a corrugated aluminum material that they also use consistently throughout the interior of the store. And then the new sign goes over the top of that material, and it's the same exact style sign that you have there now with the pick and save signs, except that it is not internally lit. It will be lighted with gooseneck lamps, a gooseneck style lamp on the outside. So it's quite a bit more subtle than the pick and save signs that are there now.
Great. Thank you.
You bet.
Doug?
Thank you. So, as Mr. Johnson said, this is brought about because of the rebranding here to Metro Market. The CSP from 2016 did not allow for this to be considered administratively. The backing facade was not included in the materials listed, and then sort of referencing with our current sign plan, that would typically be included as well as part of the signage area. So that was something that I mentioned, in discussion, was really that this, it's sort of integral to the signage. So that was an element as well as the lighting. So as was said, it's the 3 signs, 3 wall signs that are existing to be switched out. I do have landlord approval. I did receive that today. That was not included in the packet specifically, but I have signed approval from the landlord that they are comfortable with this, and I can share that with the commission. In speaking with representatives from Graphic House, they said they showed the importance of this to the rebranding, the backing in particular, to the rebranding and sort of consistency across the market. So I had listed this as a repeal and a replace of the existing CSP. I would just, that seemed to be the policy direction of the commission to do that rather than to grant exceptions. But I left the recommendation fairly open at the bottom there, the staff recommendation for discussion and then possible action. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Okay, can you hear me now? This is where it'd be nice to be meeting in person and be able to point at things, but I don't know if everybody can. If I go up here, the way it is right now is with our new sign code where we just recodified, by just doing that background like that with the sign, that is part of the sign, and that's exactly how our sign code reads. I'm sorry if somebody is still looking. It's really hard to figure out. But this looks like, to me, this looks like it doesn't do your building any justice. It looks like somebody put a billboard right in the middle of there and said, good enough. It looks temporary almost. And I drove by your store on Cottage Grove Road, and this material, that gray material, right now, I would consider it part of the sign. I would say that's your sign area because it's clearly there to grab attention for the sign. But on your building on Cottage Grove Road, it is part of the material of the building. And I think if we want to do something like that, we need to work with the architecture of the building. And we've done this before as an exception. This area, I got a big finger right in here. If you look at how we did that, and Doug, I'll go back. I'm sorry, I'm bouncing all over. I'll go back to it. I would do it as an exception because the reason we have the signage plan the way it is so that you can just go administratively say, yeah, that meets it, go, go, go. And then when somebody like B-dub-dub or Staples comes in, then it comes in and says, this is a little different. We need to look at this as a commission. But if you look at what we did with Staples or what we did with B-dub-dub, they filled in this area. They both insisted on their color, but they filled this area in. So it looked like it was part of the architecture. It didn't look like you just put a billboard on the sign. So for me, oh, I can almost see it. That area there, a suggestion, there could be other ways to solve it, but that area right there should be that material. And you really, then it's part of the building architecture. You're branding yourself as not only the material you use, but it kind of shows it off as an entry point. What's proposed, I think, is it looks like a temporary sign. And then when I looked at Cottage Grove Road, your primary sign is on this material. Your secondary sign is on the stone. You have this material right next to it, but you put it on the stone instead, which tells me that it doesn't have to be on it for every elevation, because I'm not exactly sure how to fix the other two, because you're running those outside of the signage area. There were some, wow, this card. There were some signage bands built into this where that pick and save is, but what you're proposing exceeds it. And again, this looks like you've just put a billboard on the side. It takes away from the architecture of the building. So I would be looking for a suggestion on how you think, if you have to have that on your secondary signage, how you would implement that to make it flow with the architecture of the building, not look like you're just putting up a big sign, because otherwise I would consider that a sign. I would consider the whole thing a sign. I'd say it's, honestly, it's not very attractive for the building. And Doug, I would suggest when we do something, we would just make exception, which we've done for B-dub-dub and Staples. And then with those two, we said if, and we do it, and our rationale for doing this is that they are a main tenant, an anchor tenant of the center. And I think it's clear that Metro or Pick and Save, Staples, B-dub-dub, those are the anchors there. And that's the rationale or the finding of fact we use for it. But then it also says that if that tenant vacates, then it reverts to the original signage plan, which makes a lot of sense to me. So that's my view on it.
Okay, great, thank you. So with apologies, I forgot to close the public hearing and open. So I'm going to close the public hearing with Chris as the break, if you will, and go to item 6B, which is consideration of action on the request by Lisa and Graphic House, the property owner, United Properties, to repeal the existing 2016 37 signage plan and replace it with a revised comprehensive signage plan for Pier 37 dated March 13, 2021, case number S-004-2021. So with that, now that we're back into action and Chris has already spoken, Susan Fox.
Well, I appreciate those comments because I hadn't thought about it that way. I went down and looked at it and I looked at Staples. I thought, well, Staples has that backing, but now that I think about it, and that it does cover the whole thing, it does have a different look. And to me, it actually looks sharper if it does cover that whole area than it does with just the sign. I was thinking I'd be okay with it that way because I think it's a nice looking sign. And given that Staples has that as well, but it would be a nicer look, at least for that main part, to have that whole area filled in with that material. I think it would stand out more and look more like the one on Cottage Grove Road, which I am familiar with. That's probably, and then I guess I wondered on Cottage Grove Road, it looks like those letters are internally lit. So I wondered if you're firm about that also.
No, they do it both ways.
Okay.
The standard, which is by probably 90% of the stores, have the external lighting, and probably 90% of the stores use this style of backer rather than trying to fill in the entire area, which I can't really disagree. I think that would look nice as well. But typically this is what they do. And there's some fairly specific reasons for that. One is that in most of the buildings, and including this one, except for the front area, it really doesn't lend itself very well in the rest of the areas where they're converting stores, especially. Pick and Save is horizontal and long,
Right.
and this logo is stacked and tall, and it's difficult to try to fit. For example, on the highway side of this building, it'd be almost impossible to fit that Metro Market logo in that signage area that was designed in the back of that building. So yeah, maybe it's not ideal, but it's the way we've tried to address it throughout the system, as far as trying to keep something as consistent as we possibly can, so that logo is immediately identifiable.
Okay, well, so, I mean, is that something that might be considered to have that in the front part, and then even if the sides aren't totally filled in? I mean, I
don't think
those
that
are-
there's anything that isn't considered here. Obviously, we want just like the last
Right,
guys,
right.
we want everybody happy.
Well, and I don't know whether other people have thoughts about the lighting of the letters, whether that looks substantially different or not, to have them, not the channel letters internally lit the way they are now versus what you're talking about. But
And if that was the desire, I mean, we have done that before.
right, that's all I had for now.
Thank you, Susan. Chris?
There. I'm sorry to break back in again. I should have mentioned it. We've been trying to encourage people over the last 30 years to use Shepherd's Crook lighting in this area. So I think the lighting just goes with
Okay.
what we put on Broadway. It's put what we've been trying to get people to do. So I can't see there'd be any issue with that type of, it's not Shepherd's Crook, but it mimics what we've been doing up
Kinda
and down
mimics it,
Broadway
yeah.
and Monona Drive. So
Okay.
the lighting's
Honestly, honestly, when we were working on the initial designs for this, a lot of communities would prefer to have that type of lighting. So that was taken into consideration when we were developing this signage plan.
Okay, well, good to know.
Okay, great, thank you. Corinne?
Hi, good evening. And I guess I had similar thoughts to what Chris had said. It does just look like it's just tacked up there. When you mentioned that it's consistent with some of the materials that are used inside the store, I mean, that makes it make more sense to me. But otherwise, to me, it just, I don't know if it's the colors or I'm not sure. But
one of the things that's difficult, and perhaps, you know, if we were doing this in person, I could show you this a little easier, but you're looking at a 2D flat drawing, which makes this look like somebody drew a rectangle on the building and stuck a sign on it. And in reality, this material has depth, it has shapes, it has character. It's not just that we stuck a flat piece of wood on the building and made a billboard out of it. It does have some character. It's hard to illustrate that in a flat drawing.
okay. I mean, maybe that's something that there are opportunities to leave the materials or samples of the materials in different places. I don't know if that's something that we could get a chance to take a look at. If there is a sample of what that
There was a desire for that, I'm sure we could do it. You bet.
and I'm no graphic artist at all. So, but, and maybe it's something with the shape too, because it's within the half circle and the peak. So there's the triangle, circle, and then it's a rectangle, and the rectangle is consistent with the other two rectangles, but it just looks a little odd. I do like the lights, and I'm not sure what to do about the side pieces as well. Because I understand what you're saying about the fact that it's going from Pick and Save, which is long, to Metro Market, which is tall. So we're going landscape to portrait, I guess.
Basically, right.
But to Chris's point, it doesn't fit in that rectangle. So again, I think it looks odd, but what you're saying is it might look different than it does on the paper. So I guess I'll wait to hear what the others have to say as well. But I do like the lighting. I think that because this is the main store there, it is nice to have that look to it. And it is consistent with what else we've had being put in that area.
Okay, great. Thank you, Corinne. Christy? What? Go ahead.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I like the Metro Market signage. I like how it's modern, but I am a graphic designer, and so I understand these challenges. I have been there when you're kind of trying to fit something into something that's existing and it doesn't quite fit. I'm a super visual person, and I almost feel like inside that arch, that recessed area, if that were to be painted chocolate brown, I think that you could do that globally over the building, wherever you're putting the signs, and it might be a really nice solution. I would have to see it though, because I'm very visual. I'm gonna say the chocolate brown or possibly even the leaf green. So a really minor fix, it would really make that sign pop out. And it just might trick our eyes enough that it looks intended to be all of these different geographic shapes together. So yeah, and I like the lighting. I think, take that to your, I don't know if you're probably using Photoshop or something, maybe color that in and see how that looks. I think that might do the trick.
That's an interesting solution. We'll look at it.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Rob.
My impression of the sign was that I think it looks fine on the front of the building. I understand it's a corporate branding thing. And I think on the front of the sign, the front of the building, the main sign, because it's in that wedge shape, it seems like that wedge shape was designed to accommodate whatever sign you might want to put in there. It's kind of a nondescript shape, but it defines just a certain area. This is for signage. So I think it works okay in that location. I think the lighting is fine as well. It was the other signs that stuck out to me, as other people noticed as well. Those look very pasted on there. And I don't think they look good in that format. It's unfortunate they're stuck on that logo. I know a lot of companies will have a stacked logo and then a linear logo, but that's their decision to make. But
you're correct. You're correct. And these they don't have a horizontal version and won't entertain that idea. It's a solution that's been presented many times and rejected. They've actually passed on upgrading stores if they couldn't use this version.
It's not the first time we've seen that with signs here too. It's colors or form, and I get it to some degree. But when they go against what looks best, that's always kind of a head scratcher. That's all I really have to say. I mean, I think it looks fine in the front, and I think on the other side, it looks like it's being forced.
Great. Thank you, Rob. Brian.
Nothing much to add. I tried to look at a bunch of the other Metro Marts, like Cottage Grove Road. I get it. Chris commented on the southeast corner that it's on the brick facade, not on the metal. And if you look at any of the metal corrugated piece, it's actually surrounded by glass. It makes perfect sense. For this store, it makes no sense. you just spent the last year like redoing the facade of this whole store to now come in and say, yeah, now we want to slap a metal rectangle and put a sign on front of that. That whole thing is a sign. So I hate to tell you, the letters are not the sign as you have proposed. People are being very, very kind, and I appreciate that. And at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm being very direct. Like what you have right now, that whole rectangle is considered the sign. And the main front piece, there are some ways to get around that. Some of the other aspects in where you have it, you're going to have much more of a challenge. And I've looked at other stores outside of the Madison and Milwaukee area, and I agree. Like corporate wise, you guys have stayed to your stacked idea. And if you're going to stay to the stacked idea, that's fine. But on that beltline perspective, you're likely going to need to come up with some other better way of representing that. But it can't be a stacked idea on top of corrugated, on top of a facade that was just redone. It won't work that way.
Great, Brian, thank you. Yeah, I guess I don't really have anything to add, but and except for I don't think a sign makes a Metro Mart, so I'd be curious to know what's going to happen on the inside when we get to that, because especially given the investment that's already been made. But with that, I am looking for any kind of emotion. Do we have any kind of emotion or action this evening, Chris? You're muted.
So you didn't hear all that witty response.
No, we're eager to hear what it was. So,
oops, I shouldn't have said that. I think it needs to come back. I think we'd all agree that it needs to come back, and I think when it does, Doug, it would be very nice for you to have a picture in our packet of how we did it with Staples and how we did it with B-Dub-Dub. I think it's important to have consistency within the center, and when they did it, it had to be a feature of the entry, because Brian is 100% correct. If it's left the way it is, that entire rectangle is a sign. And if I could wave my magic wand, I would do something to use this corrugated material at the front entrance, make it architectural to the building, and have that sign so you've got the dead-on logo right there. And if you did let me wave my magic wand, you would just have the letters on the other two, the secondary signs, put the letters on with lights above them, and call it a day. And it would work, because quite honestly, this black and green would show up even better on that light beige or whatever. I'm sure Christy could give more examples of that, but for my eye, that it would show up even better. The sign would look better on there doing it that way. But again, it's up to you to come back and give us some examples of what you could do. But the way it is, it's a the whole thing's a sign. It would be way too big for the building.
Okay.
So if there's no, is there any further discussion, or I could?
Are you? Yeah. Is that a motion to table then?
Well, I would, but once I motion to table, nobody else can speak. So,
right. So what other people think? Other people? Please speak up.
I think that makes sense. I mean, it sounds like a good idea to rethink the sides, and I think I would like the look of it with this backing filling that whole area. I think it'd like to be nice to see a picture, but
okay,
it would look more like the other two.
Okay, Rob, what do you think? You want it back?
Yeah, I mean, see what they can do.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see if they could propose another alternative. That would be good to see.
Okay, Corinne?
Same.
Okay. Looks like we have Brian. Will we lose Brian?
Looks like it dropped off.
Do we need to actually have a motion?
No, I'm not. I'm just, if you know, again, I'm just trying to make sure that we have at least a majority of people that concur before Chris tables, because if he tables, we're done. So So with that, it sounds like we have a majority. Chris, do you want to make a motion to table?
Move we table.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, great. All
We
those in
still have to
favor?
vote. We still have to vote on the table.
Yes, I just said all those in favor?
Sorry. Aye.
Aye.
Cut off. I didn't hear that.
Okay, great. Sorry, Mike, you're gonna have to come back.
That's all right. I
Good luck. I
appreciate,
know,
I appreciate the comments.
been through this before. Hopefully you can work some magic this time.
Well, we'll certainly go down that road. I've been doing this 40 years. This isn't the first time.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening. Now we'll move to 6C, the pre-hearing conference on the request by Restaurant Depot, represented by ADA Architects, Inc., for consideration of a zoning permit for new use and construction at 6950 Fishholt Drive, case number 2-007-2021. Hello, Heather. Hello, Stephanie. Are you presenting this evening?
Yes, so I'm Heather Mize from ADA Architects, and then we also have Stephanie Mallory, who's the construction manager for Restaurant Depot.
Right.
Also listening in and available if we have questions, Tricia Snyder, who's the COO for Restaurant Depot in the Midwest.
Oh.
And then we have Mark Membrino and Kyle Gapson representing the property owners at MPI.
Great. Thank you very much. Go right ahead.
Okay, so I think what I'd like to do, because it is a little bit of a unique use, is Stephanie Mallory can speak a little bit about the business and the use, and then I can talk specifics about this building and the project changes that we're proposing.
Hello, everybody. I'm Stephanie, and we basically, who we are and what we do is can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay. We are a wholesale food operation that supplies dry and perishable products to your local mom and pop restaurants. And basically what we do is we give your restaurant on the corner option other than, having their food delivered to their restaurant. So Cisco delivers to them, a couple of our competitors, deliver to them, and, they never know what they're getting. They just take their delivery. Well, with us, you get to come in and shop. We have a huge, Heather will go over this in a minute, but we have a huge freezer and a huge cooler that the customer is able to walk in the cooler and walk around the cooler and pick out their own perishables, and then shop from regular reach-in doors in the freezer. So this particular store is going to be a downsize of our regular stores. Our regular stores are high pile. They're 65,000 square foot and bigger. This is going to be a smaller scale of that the public is actually allowed to come into. So this is going to be our first one. We have not done an RD Express. As a matter of fact, I'm building one in Stockton, which is where I'm at right now. And it's not open yet either. So they're going to go pretty much back to back. However, when I say the public is going to come in, we're geared towards the restaurant owner. So we're going to be selling in bulk. We're not for your local mom to come in and shop with us, that's just getting a few things. If she wants ketchup, it's going to be in a big container. If she wants, toilet paper, it's going to be the big case. It's not just, a couple of great big packages in a box. It's going to be bulk. So basically we're just geared towards the restaurants and restaurants only, and your delis, catering trucks, you name it. The truck traffic that would be coming into this facility would be your smaller box trucks, not a lot of traffic. We get about 20 deliveries a day. And so that would be 40 trips in and out. And the average transaction for a purchase at one of our facilities would not be like a Costco. We would be looking at larger transactions, smaller volume visiting our location. Let me see if I left off anything. I think that's about it. I mean, we a lot of our stuff is taxable, so we bring in a lot of tax dollars to the city. Even if it is a restaurant, you know, the food would be non-taxable, but there are many items in our store that is taxable, like your to-go boxes, your paper products, your cleaning supplies, all of those good things that the restaurant would need. We sell everything from equipment all the way down to your oranges and frozen product. So I think what the best way to explain this is if Heather, if you want to put up one of our fixture plans, and let's take them through our store per se, and we can give them an idea, because I'm a visual person. I'm staring at all of you guys and I'm used to looking at plans. So I'm, you know, kind of tongue tied here of not having a plan in front of me to say what is what. So Heather, why don't you take her away from there?
Doug, can I do that, or it says I was disabled?
Can you do that as a co-host, or do you need full host? I'll give you full host.
When I click, it says host disabled, participant screen sharing. So, oh wait, now I'm the host. Aha. Oh, you know what? I was having some issues. Could you make the blank screen that doesn't have my picture on it? I'm on this call twice.
Let me work on that.
Sorry.
I think we're all probably used to this by now.
I know.
Right.
We had so many issues. You would think a year in that all the bugs would be worked out, but we had so many issues today alone.
By the way, while we're working that out, we have well over 125 locations already as far as Restaurant Depot goes. We originated in New York, and we ventured all the way out to the West Coast. So how our division is divided up, we have an East Coast, a Midwest, and a West Coast. An East Coast, Midwest, West Coast.
Yeah, and while we wait for that, my name's Trisha Snyders. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Midwest region. And just wanted to say that with this new concept of RD Express, we are really excited to be able to have that, be one of the very first into the market of that in your city. So we are excited about that opportunity. And if you're not familiar with our location, as Stephanie already mentioned, we really do bring a great value to your smaller local business owners, and not just them, but that really is kind of our prime audience. And a core value for us is bringing them value. So we are very committed to having the lowest prices, and we cut cost out of our operations so that we can pass along those savings to those customers. So we're really excited to really be able to partner with you guys and bring some value to not only your community, but also to your business owners, where we can bring them some good value. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Doug, how are we doing?
I think you got permission for me to share, but on the other account. Let's see.
You just switch that again.
Sorry.
How about that one?
Hey, there we go.
Thanks.
Okay. There we go. And I'm on the wrong. move what I want to the right screen. Jackpot. Okay. Now we're cooking. All right. So we've got the, let's see. Are we seeing the letter or are we seeing my?
Just the file explorer right now.
How's that? There we go.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you for that. So this is the property that we're talking about. Just for orientation, although I'm sure you know this, the Walmart is about 3 properties down this direction. Currently, there are a number of industrial properties in the area, and this is being used right now as a mechanical contractor, the subcontractor, both their manufacturing facility, and I think they're based their crews out of here. So the front part of the building is being used as offices. The rear part is being used for manufacturing those mechanical equipment, ductwork and things like that. There's parking along the front. There's parking along the left side. And then on the right-hand side, there's some truck access with currently 1 recessed truck dock. There's a storage building that we're proposing to reuse. And then there's kind of like a Quonset hut sort of tarp shed, they call it, that we won't be using. And then back in this area, this 20 by 24, we're proposing to add an additional smaller section of the building just to expand to have 1 additional recessed truck dock. And then our compactor will go there as well.
I just want to interject. I'm sorry. That area right there already has the foundation for that dock. We are just going to enclose it. So we're not modifying the site plan. That is actually how it looks currently right now. So go on.
Thank you. Yeah, the grading is already here. This is already the 4-foot drop. It just is a pad open to the sky, and we'll put a roof and walls around it. So that's the site plan. And then as Stephanie mentioned, just to get you kind of the lay of the land here, entering from the street side, you know, as you enter the building, there's a check-in customer service desk. This area here with the 2 rows of shelves and the 3 up front, that is all walk-in cooler. So the customers will come in and they'll pick up their case of cheese or their case of lettuce or broccoli or whatever it is. They will come in and shop this portion of the store. This area here is a large freezer with reach-in drawers, just like you would have at the supermarket. So employees would work inside this part of the store, but customers could shop the perimeter. And then the majority of this space is dry sales area for food, equipment, supplies, takeout containers, janitorial supplies, anything else that those business owners would need. There's a small area with some mechanical rooms and offices. And then in the back, we have our existing receiving area and the expanded receiving area. This building also happens to have a mezzanine, which isn't really going to be used for our use, but it is part of the square footage there. So that's the building interior. And then on the exterior of the space, and I'm going to flip over to this because there's a nice photo. The existing building looks like this. There's some windows along the front. It's a pre-engineered metal building. So the base on that front office area has some concrete block split face. And then the rest of it is just a, you know, standard pre-engineered metal building, corrugated panel. So there's a blue band here that's a steel band, and then the panels above. And then as you go around the corners and the higher part of this building, it's just the corrugated metal panel as well. So what we are proposing on the front is we're looking at 2 different options. We have all of these windows, and as you can see on the floor plan, a lot of what's happening behind those windows is going to be shelving for storage of products. So the windows themselves don't have a lot of use for what Restaurant Depot is looking to do. They'll just be hidden by product. So we're looking to either put some opaque film on those so they still have the appearance of windows from the street, and then put a wall behind them just so that it's a little bit more secure, or potentially remove them and install some block to kind of coordinate with what's already there. We're looking to expand the entrance. You can see on this photo, right now it's a single swinging door with some side lights. We're looking to put in a sliding bipart door. And then on the rear of the building, this is that receiving expansion area. So we're just looking to do a lower height, basically just enough to be able to get the truck dock door in and move that product into the main building. So you can see there's several on-grade dock doors, which we will not be using. This one recessed truck dock and then one additional truck dock that we're proposing. The compactor that Restaurant Depot uses is an enclosed compactor. So everything enters through a chute, goes into the compactor. It's a roll-off container. So it's not open. There's no door that you lift off and throw bags of trash in. It's all very well contained. I think that's it as far as building exterior. There are a few things, and I know this was mentioned in the staff report. There are a few mechanical items. So right now there are a few at-grade air conditioner units, very small, similar to a residential type unit. We're looking to replace some of those and upgrade them. They're quite old. One of these will, instead of replacing with another air conditioner, we intend to put a small generator in. And then we'll be adding an additional HVAC unit in the back here to serve the rear of the building. On this side, there's another small air conditioning unit that we'll remove. And then there's a screen wall here that's, I believe this one's metal to match the building. We'll have some refrigeration equipment that goes behind that. And then with this storage building, we're intending to put some additional equipment in there, protected from the weather. And as far as equipment goes, that's pretty much what we have on site. There's a fair amount of landscaping on the property already, a number of mature trees and some shrubs. Our understanding is that some of those are, I don't know if they're completely dead or if there are just some in need of some heavy pruning or some removal. So our plan was to have a landscaper take a look at all the plant materials and remove what needs to be removed and replace the low shrubs along the front as needed. The trees, I believe we have more trees, and Doug, you can confirm, I believe we have more trees than are required. We were looking at 7 required, and I'm estimating that we'll have 8 left, but I think we actually have 11 to begin with, and we're just assuming that if some of those are removed, we'll still have enough to really reflect what's needed for the parking area requirements. I think that's it as far as building description. Doug, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to point out or have questions about, or if we should open to questions now.
I think that provides a good good overview of kind of the plans and things like that, certainly.
Great. Is there anybody else from your team that wanted to say anything? I know you have a crew here. Otherwise, we can ask Doug to talk about his staff recommendation.
Okay, I just wanted to say one more thing. So on the sign package that we showed you, I just downloaded the sign code today, so I'm not sure. I don't know what the square footage per lineal footage it is. However, we would like a pylon sign, and I'm not too sure in that area if it's going to be allowed. Our sign is self-illuminated. I know that the other sign guy that was on here, you liked his lights. We could also do that, but I would rather have it internally We do not like channeled letters. We would like a cabinet. So I want to make sure what we're looking at there is going to be okay. And we can go through that as your questions go along. I just wanted to kind of point that out because I wanted some feedback on that. The second thing that I wanted to let you know is that the parking lot is in very bad condition, and the owner has agreed to redo the parking lot. And when we were out on site, we had saw that the sidewalks for the public around the building, they're all broken up, and they're broken up from one reason, and that is the roof drains of the downspouts. The scuppers are not tied into the storm. And when the owner goes to repair the parking lot, we intend to route those the correct way and make so that the sidewalks don't get broken up from ice. And because the roof draining right out on, there's no splash box, or there's none of those things for the scupper coming down. So we had agreed that it will fix the sidewalks and repair all brand new sidewalks if we can, tie this in correctly. So that is going to be an upgrade to the building, and the parking lot in general will just make that area just look so fresh, and it'll just pop. So I wanted to let you guys know that.
Thank you very much.
I'd also like to just say just a couple words. I'm the building owner, Mark Membrino, and we are very excited to have Restaurant Depot as a tenant for this building. We think it's a great use with Walmart and everything else that's going on there. I've done a lot of work with building supply companies, and we think we equate Restaurant Depot with that kind of use. And thank you for taking the opportunity to talk about this. And if there's any questions from the ownership perspective, I'm more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Okay. Doug, would you like to share your report?
We're getting a ton of feedback, so can people please mute? Or maybe I'm just getting feedback, but
no, I'm getting it too. That seems to have addressed it. Could we go back to the gallery view as well, please? Thank you. So just in terms of the staff report, a lot of elements were discussed in that presentation. I did want to call out the zoning and land use element here, and I've spoken with the applicant about this sort of during the process as well. So it is zoned CDD, Community Design District, and so the zoning permit's required for both the change in use as well as the small piece of construction that's planned here. The 2016 comp plan does classify this property as industrial use in both the current and future land use maps. The light industrial per section 8.1.1 is defined as land use for indoor industrial, including light manufacturing, assembly, warehouse, and other storage uses. So I had flagged that. So the commission, may choose to discuss the compatibility of the proposed use, specifically sort of the orientation and the particular customer that it would be targeting, rather than maybe a traditional retail space. Again, that sort of leads into the parking discussion. The industrial nature for parking, as defined by attachment 2 of the zoning ordinance, does give a little bit more of a description here in terms of it classifies wholesale establishments. So again, in terms of the parking, the lighting, as well as the landscaping, I think there's some discussion to be had there about the industrial classification, specifically as it relates to those three things. Just a point to flag as well is the 7 parking stalls that are sort of on the back of the building. They would only be accessed through the gate on the right side of the building as you're sort of approaching it. It's suggested that they be staff only parking. There's no through circulation there, so it would be sort of to the back, and you'd have to go past the loading dock. So I just wanted to flag that. The building improvements were mentioned, so I think definitely the applicant's looking for feedback in terms of the frontage, the windows or the film. For that, the landscaping, at the moment, there's very little that's proposed to be going in as sort of a replacement or additional. There are established trees on the site, and they've already been mentioned, but I mentioned in the staff report that a landscaping plan sort of possibly calling out both existing and future would be appropriate for that, for the formal hearing. And then again, with the signage, the applicant can certainly apply for the signage at the same time as the formal hearing. I would encourage them to do that, and certainly the signage that was shown tonight, I think the pylon sign, if I remember correctly, it's not in a pylon district, so it's not eligible for that, but other discussion, lighting, things like that, if there's feedback, then certainly that would be welcome. So that's it for me. Thank you. Nancy, you're on mute.
You're muted, Nancy.
I said I'm going to guess that you're missing the overhead projector again on this one, that you probably would like to have your pin out, but why don't you go ahead, start us off on this one.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I missed the whole first part of it. Okay, first for use. I think I could sit in any number of those office buildings in that building and look right at Walmart. So if it works for Walmart, I don't see why it wouldn't work for this building. I think it's an appropriate use for this area. I think anytime we can get a business that wants to bring people into Monona, that's great, because hopefully they'll patronize some of our other businesses too. So I have absolutely zero issue with the use. In fact, I appreciate it anytime you can bring people in. As far as the windows, absolutely opaque covering and block behind. Again, look to the Walmart building. Look at all the windows on the Walmart building. They aren't really going into the building. That was architectural to make it look a little softer and nicer. I think if you block this in, it would totally change the look of that building. Signage, Nancy mentioned, you're not eligible for a pylon, but you are eligible for a landscape ground sign. And our landscape ground signs, Doug can help you with the specs on that. They're up to 5 foot tall and usually I think 60 square feet, Doug, something like that. So it goes right up by the curb. We have standards on what it can be. You just can't have a pylon or a really tall sign. Landscaping, our standard, those are the minimums. And I would suggest, I agree that we need a landscape plan. And if we're taking out trees, we probably need to replace them. That hedgerow in the front by the parking, some of them are still alive, some aren't. That needs to be redone. And looking at the site, it's well landscaped. It really is. I don't know what's dead there at this time of year. But when you come in on the left side of your driveway, it's barren. There should be a tree or two in there. But again, just look at a landscape plan. We're not talking about a lot, but something that would make it look nice. I'm very happy to hear you're going to take down that tarp shed, because I don't believe that was ever approved to be there. I can't imagine it would have been. And I see it's already got a bunch of patches on it from where it was leaking. So I think that just rung up. Screening on the east side, it depends on what you're putting in there and how big it is. Those little AC units that are there, I don't think we usually require those to be screened, but if you need a substantial something that's a lot bigger, I think that's something we just need to look at when you bring plans in. It might be something that needs some screening. And as you've already observed, what we ask for on screening is something that's architecturally similar to the building. So that's why the screening there right now is that same metal. And we are in an industrial area, so I'm not saying this is a standard that we'd have on Monona Drive. It's just more for the industrial area. I'm just alerting you. It doesn't look like you're doing a lot, but when you show that sewer line cutting through your site at an angle, that's a really, really major. It's like a 54 or 60-inch Madison Met interceptor. I mean, that thing, you want to stay away from that as far as you possibly can. Don't disturb the ground over the top of it if you can help it. And if you're anywhere near it, make sure you have a watchdog and make sure you know what you're doing around it. That's a major, major, major line that's going through there. I agree with Doug, staff, on the employee parking. It absolutely should be employee parking behind your gate. Once you get behind the gate, that shouldn't be for the general public unless you have general public that comes and wants to use an overhead door for a major purchase or one of your loading dock doors. But then it's controlled by you, and you control who's behind your gate. And I suspect you want to be that way too. I brushed over one, Heather. You must think you're in Wisconsin, because first thing you said is, well, if somebody comes into our cooler and wants to buy a case of cheese. First thing you mentioned was a case of cheese.
I didn't even put that together, but yes, you do.
So that must have been,
I brought some home.
You tailor that to wherever you're presenting, I suspect. Parking, to me, I don't know your business. To me, the parking looks like it's probably adequate when you have the smaller volume of people coming, but the larger purchases. And you know your business better than I do, but you have quite a few stalls there, and you're right, it's in terrible shape. You want to connect your downspouts to a sewer and get it out of there. I agree with that. When you look at our ordinance, we say you need to run it across our permeable surfaces, pervious surfaces, as much as possible. In this case, A, it's roof water, so it's clean. It's considered clean water. And B, you are right next to a major wetland and our detention basin. So for the minimal infiltration we could get there, and it's not the best, I mean, you have a very narrow area where it's just going to probably infiltrate and get into the parking lot. You see a lot of the rutting and everything in your parking lot is from a lot of groundwater nearby, and the groundwater level's so high. And from where you're at, I don't think, at least for me, I don't think that'd be an issue to hook them up. I think it actually would be very practical for this site and improve the longevity of not just your sidewalks, but your parking lot. I think you can get that water out of there. In your case, it would be an advantage to you. I think I've covered all the questions that at least I remember that you asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Rob?
Thank you. Chris did the heavy lifting, I think there. I'm fine with the use. I think it's appropriate. I think it'll be great there. I think you have adequate parking based on what you've described. With the windows, I was going to say that I'd like to see a more photorealistic example of what you're proposing. But Chris pointed out Walmart across the way, so blocking it up gives it kind of a correctional feel to me. So maybe the opaque coverings would be the way to go there. The fencing, is that proposed to stay, or is that going to be replaced?
I believe we're proposing just to keep what's there.
Okay.
I don't remember condition wise if anything needed to be replaced. I don't recall that it did.
Okay. And then, yeah, this being the first RD Express, I think you'd want to replace some of those trees in the front and make that front entrance look a little better, because those ashes are dead. And there's 3 at least that I counted, all of 12 to 15-inch caliper. And those, they can look bad. The landscaping looks a little rough. I think Chris was a little generous in his assessment. But there's a couple hostas and a couple daylilies, but I think it would do one, not a lot of landscaping, but just freshen it up a little bit and add a couple of landscape island trees to replace what's there. I think could do a lot. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Christy?
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a great use for this space. It's a great location. I agree. Walmart's right there. It makes a lot of sense. So I have no problems there at all. I was wondering if you plan on having shopping cart storage outside in the parking lot somewhere, or it does not apply to your model?
Sometimes they can be outside, but typically we don't have a traditional shopping cart like you would have at a regular grocery store. It's more of a, we call it a U-boat. It's kind of a flat, where you can stack cases on it.
Sure.
So no, we don't have them out in the parking lots like you would at a traditional grocery store.
So they bring it back to the store when they're done.
Right.
Great. Okay. I was curious. I'm really curious about your store, and I've never been in one. So I was wondering if you could tell me like the percentage of your food sold, say, to the non-food products.
Well, most of our business, obviously the largest volume items that we have are the fresh. So your meat, your produce, cheeses, if you will. All of the highly perishable products, let's just call it half. Let's say, half to 60% is probably that. And then the other half are those items that you need to run your business. So, they mentioned carryout containers, cleaning supplies, paper supplies, all of those different things. But really, I mean, the big things are the things in restaurants that you would normally have. And the biggest quantity of those items are the meats and produce and things like that.
Okay. I was curious because we do have several small locally owned businesses selling restaurant supply. It's not food, but it's they're right in that vicinity. And so I just, was sensitive to them and about that.
Absolutely.
If there's an opportunity to go a little heavier on food, that might be collegial of you.
Food is our main driver of the business. Like I said, I mean, that's what restaurants need in the most frequency and the most volume.
Understood. Okay. Yeah. And then I was also curious of like your customer mix. So you said it's like small locally owned restaurants coming.
I would say that's really our prime customer because typically your larger national chains, they just typically go through different delivery services. So really our prime customer are those, smaller businesses that want to go somewhere and get it and really, have the, I don't want to say greater need, but they don't have a greater need to save money. But certainly it can hit their pocketbook a little bit more directly than it can some of the bigger. So, I mean, anyone that owns a restaurant, or a business is certainly welcome to come, but that's our prime customer.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, I think, we have a lot of food trucks in this area. So I could see that being a cool market for you. We have a ton of nonprofits that do events and do their own catering. So I feel like there's a really cool opportunity to help out a lot of people in this endeavor.
Absolutely. And, it's, we mentioned having really good pricing, which is a key reason why a lot of people shop with us, but also, we don't have minimum purchases like you would with some of our competitors where, you have to buy this many cases. So if they only want to buy one case because they're a food truck and they don't have a lot of storage, then that's what they'll buy. And then they'll come back tomorrow and they'll buy another one. So, but typically, like I said, it's the larger, but that's where we really, especially during this past year, where we've really been able to help a lot of businesses in conserving their cash.
All right. And you don't have a membership model?
We do have a membership model, but it's free. There's no charge for it.
Okay, awesome. Yep. And then, I definitely like the idea of keeping the windows on the front. And I don't know, I'm going to throw out an idea because everybody here knows I like color. I was wondering if instead of a white opaque film, because the building does look very industrial, you do see a lot of grocery markets that do a perforated film with like fruit or produce on it. And I don't know if that ever works with your brand. Might that be a consideration just so it's noticeably a food service business? Do you not like that, Chris? Chris is making a face. He doesn't like that idea.
We can give you some mock-ups to see what you would like and what's approved from our corporate first before we show them. We can do anything. That's not a lot of money. So as long as it's not costing, a fortune, obviously we want to make money, not spend it.
Sure.
So,
an idea, Stephanie, might be just like you have your main entrance, just the windows at the side, the first set of windows on the either side of the door, maybe as an option. Just I was thinking that might help because your sign is not like obviously, and it's new to our market. So it's none of us have that search image that, oh, there's Restaurant Depot. And it might help.
It's a great idea. And I will send you some mock-ups after they're approved. we can come up with some great ideas for those windows.
All right, great. That is all I have. And yeah, excited to see you coming to Monona.
Thank you. Susan?
All right. I don't really have anything to add. I think it's a great use. So no questions. And I had the exact same thought about the windows. In fact, looking across at Walmart is what made me think that, well, yeah, why would you remove these windows? I do think you need to keep those. And if the film works, that's great. Also had the same thought about landscaping, but I can't tell what's dead and what's not either. So I'm, but I think, yeah, a little work on that would be good. And glad to hear the parking lot will be fixed. So I really don't have anything to add. I think it's great, very exciting.
Right.
It's a neat idea.
Corinne?
Thank you. Yeah, I don't have any problem with the use. I mean, there's other retail type establishments in that area as well, that are in the industrial area. So I also would like the windows to stay. So whatever you can do with that. The one question I had is, in the packet, you said that the deliveries are going to be by semi-trucks 2 to 5 times a day. But then I thought in your presentation, you said you had 20 deliveries a day. So I guess I'm just looking for a little more clarification on that.
For this particular small building, there aren't semis. That's what maybe Heather was a little bit confused on. Semis aren't going to be delivering to this particular.
Okay.
Well, also that number of deliveries is more typical with our large format store, and this is a smaller new prototype, and we do not anticipate as many deliveries to that.
So it's going to be the smaller trucks, but more than 2 deliveries and less than 20? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, and a little bit of that is to be determined, but it's definitely not going to be more than our larger stores that are twice this size.
Okay. And that was another question I had about your customers and what they would be arriving in. I am not, I don't know enough about parking lot dimensions, but I know there is a lot of parking there, but if your customers are coming in with larger vehicles, if you feel there's enough space for them, or if when you restripe, if there's going to be fewer parking stalls or to make room for those larger vehicles?
No, we use standard. It's not an issue in our stores. Most of our customers, some will have larger vans, but it's usually not anything that doesn't fit in a typical parking spot. Sometimes it does, and they may, they just kind of bleed over the parking spot, but it's usually just a normal size vehicle that would fit in a regular parking spot.
Okay.
Typically.
Okay. That was it for me, but I think it's a great use and exciting.
Thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, sorry, I got bumped off a few times, but great use. And windows, I agree with the opaque, don't cover them up. And I'm glad you're like restriping the parking lot. All those pieces are good. Landscaping, I'm positive things are moving forward. Everything else looks good. Great.
Anyway, thank you. Any other comments? Chris?
Can't just start talking, can I? I want to piggyback on what Corinne mentioned, and I understand the vans that'll be coming there, but everybody is loading, unloading, loading, unloading. That was built as an office parking lot with 9-foot stalls. If it were my store, I would definitely stripe. I'd lose a stall or two and I'd go 10-foot wide or 10.5-foot wide, because they're always trying to get in and out of the sides of vans. And at 9 foot, yourself, when you go to a store, you can barely open your door to get yourself in and out. So just a suggestion, I think is a good point by Corinne. I think I'd lose a couple stalls and make them a little wider. Your customers will love it. This was built as for office vehicles once a day. You're talking multiple times. So just a comment. And then I didn't answer one of your questions. On your sign, you prefer cabinet signs, we prefer channel lit letters. So let's see what we come up with. We always allow cabinet signs for logos and things. I don't know what that round thing was, but that would be really hard for channel, but perhaps the verse to the right of it could be channel letters, and you'll just have to see. We just really will react to your signed proposal when you bring it in. Thank you.
Getting back to the parking lot though, so that is an HVAC contractor's lot as well. So off to the side there, it seems to be striped for the bigger trucks because they do have the big work trucks. But we will look at it. It's a very good point. I agree with him, Trisha. So let's talk about that one for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, no, great point. Good suggestion.
Great. Corrine, did you have something else?
Yeah, I just because we were talking about gooseneck at the Metro Market, that doesn't mean that we need gooseneck here. So you had made a comment about it sounded like we prefer that, but it's a different location. So don't feel like that's something that we're pushing for, or at least I'm not pushing for that.
Agreed.
No. Okay, great. Fantastic. We're glad you found us here in Monona.
Thank you.
We look forward to having you here.
Yeah, well, we look forward to it too. Thank you all for your time today. It was really great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the comments.
We appreciate it.
Thank you. Number 7, reports from staff and commission members. Staff report.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick items here. First one, I wanted to give the commission an update. The Monona Drive McDonald's property, a while back, that was a request that came in about addressing the fencing there that was missing a couple panels. It was a condition of the zoning permit. We did finally get in touch with the owner. It's a little difficult there with the franchise and just trying to pin them down, but got in touch with the owner, sent a few letters, and we had some correspondence, and that's been fixed. So that looks a lot better. I think it was something to do with the snow that maybe, a vehicle or a plow or something had knocked it out. So that's been addressed. Upcoming items, there's still quite a few things kind of moving through. Looks like we'll probably have something April 12th, given it's a 5-week month here in March. There's another week really there for folks to get their applications in. I suspect the Metro Market sign will try and come through pretty quickly there, and we'll see how quickly the Restaurant Depot folks, if we can make the noticing work, they may look to move pretty quickly as well. There's nothing else from me, just the upcoming meetings. April 12th, I expect we'll have a meeting. Most likely April 26th will be combined with a meeting on May 10th, rather than having separate meetings. I'll be out on family leave probably at that point. So my wife and I are expecting. So due date is April 25th, so we'll see. But I'm working with both Lisa and the city administrator right now to get some cover for that meeting, because plenty of stuff is still coming through. So most likely 26 will be canceled and pushed to the 10th. That's it for me.
Doug, and again, congratulations. We're super.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm glad we passed that family leave a couple of years ago at City Council so that you can take some time and
Absolutely.
enjoy the baby. Do you know what it is yet, or is it a secret?
We do. It's a baby girl.
Do we know what her name's going to be?
I do. It's a trap. We keep saying it around the house, but we're keeping it to just amongst ourselves right now. So trying not to let it slip.
Okay. Great. Christy, was that your kitty that was crying?
He really wanted the groceries from Restaurant Depot, I think.
He had something to say.
I'm like, feed the cat.
I have a kitty named Gabby, and I think she's Gabby, but your cat might have.
Serious case of spring fever, too.
Okay. Anything else tonight, Rob? Yeah.
I don't think we should gloss over the fact that Chris suggested that we reduce the amount of parking, potentially. I just want that noted on the record.
Yeah, we get that on the record. Good point. Good point. Anything else tonight? No other requests. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move adjournment.
Second.
I will second that.
Fantastic. We have an adjournment in a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Has it been 90 minutes yet?
Oh my
It's over 2 hours. I won.